Hello, my name is Russell Myers. Welcome to Issues Unite. Forgive me if my voice sounds a little bit hoarse right now. Uh, Getting over a sinus infection. Anyway, so OPEC Plus announced an oil production cut of 2 million barrels per day this week. And this comes at the same time that the European Union announced that they were going to impose an oil price cap on oil exported from Russia, but only if it's exported by a maritime route, by shipping routes. In other words, if it goes to poorer third world countries, then there is an oil price cap being imposed. But if it's being shipped by pipeline into Europe, then it's perfectly okay. Yeah, okay, right. So so oil prices had gone down, but immediately with this announcement, oil prices started climbing again, which is really the purpose, to keep on jacking up the price of oil, no matter what kind of economic distress the entire world is in right now. So what was the U.S., Biden's response that he may, order that the U.S. will stop exporting oil? Yeah, that makes us a real good, reliable energy partner there to Europe after all the sanctions on Russian oil and gas have been imposed on Europe, which have driven their energy prices up to where they are suffering deindustrialization at this point. And so, millions of Europeans, the majority of people in Europe, are afraid that they are not going to be able to pay their energy bills this winter. And as more and more layoffs keep on climbing, the number of people with that fear keeps on rising. Now, I'm just completely shocked that they are not out in the streets raging. Of course, there are protests that are happening, and they're not really being covered in Western media, including in the countries that these protests are happening in. But is that a surprise? No, it's not a surprise. Anyway, so, and the Biden administration is now talking about lifting sanctions on Venezuela. Well, those sanctions were imposed on Venezuela by the Obama-Biden administration. And, let's wait and see, because this is the second attempt by the Biden administration to try and convince Venezuela to sell oil to the United States. And the first time, Maduro just pretty much told Biden to get bent. There's a whole bunch of stuff with Iran that is completely up in the air. Still trying to talk Iran into increasing oil production to sell, while still keeping sanctions on Iran, which is not going to turn out well. Iran is selling oil, including to Europe, under alternative means since they were removed by the United States from the Swift system, which is supposed to be a non-political system, which has been weaponized by the United States. Trade is supposed to be trade. It's not supposed to be weaponized by the stated purposes of the Swift system and the World Trade Organization and so forth. It's interesting that the World Trade Organization has said that we need to remove all sanctions on all countries. And the United States, that wants to weaponize absolutely everything, will not go along with it. All right, and other information coming out now. Credit Suisse, a global banking conglomerate based in Switzerland, has been suffering a lot of controversy lately with the value of their stocks. They're laying off thousands of people globally, and their stock has just plummeted, and it's starting to look like a very strong possibility that they will fail. And now they're claiming that they've got enough liquidity in reserve for what's going on with them, but we've heard this before. We heard this with Lehman Brothers. We heard this with Bear Stearns. 2008, we had all of this stuff with these banks claiming they had enough liquidity for all the stuff that was going on, and they all had to be bailed out, and the repercussions of their bad trade practices, which are still in place today and on steroids, they led to the financial collapse. Well, if this happens again, it's going to be far worse than it was in 2008. Right this minute, the United States stock market is down by about 19% year to date. And you see this little climb, and then it drops again. And anyway, it's starting to look like, Credit Suisse might have to be bailed out by the Swiss government. Meanwhile, for years now, Deutsche Bank, another global banking conglomerate based out of Germany, has been at risk of collapsing for several years now. All these banks are highly over-leveraged, but that's not even the frightening part. The frightening part is how interconnected they are, because one bank will invest in another bank, such as Deutsche Bank may be invested in Credit Suisse. What happened in 2008 was that all these banks and financial services firms interconnected with the banks were all so invested in one another that when one falls, it causes a domino effect. This is all casino economics. So let me explain a couple of terms here. When I talk about a company being over-leveraged, what that means is that, for instance, their stock price is far above and beyond the value of all of their assets. Tesla is a major example of this. If you look at the value of the stock and compare it to the value of all of their assets. They're physical manufacturing plants, their intellectual property, their current revenue, their projected revenue, and put it all together, the stock is still valued above all of that combined. So if they stop making any profit at all, the stock can completely collapse. And there's nothing that stockholders or bondholders are going to be able to get out of this. And the banks are major holders of stock, and even the Federal Reserve is invested in junk bonds, in zombie corporations. Junk bonds are bonds that are never expected to be paid out. Zombie corporations are corporations whose revenue cannot even service their current level of debt. They have more debt than they have assets. They are underwater. In some cases, these companies don't even have products. They don't have any product or service to sell, and yet their stock value can be completely insane. So when you hear banks talking about how they control, they don't really say they have these assets. It says they control assets. So how do assets work? Well, if you owe money to a bank, a car loan, a student loan, what have you, well, the money that you owe that bank by that bank is considered an asset to the bank. It goes as far as I have a secured credit card with a collateral account, which with money deposited, which is equal to my credit limit on that card. I don't want an unsecured credit card. If it ever happened that I was unable to make the payments, all I would have to do would be to cash out the collateral account, apply the money to my balance on the credit card, and anything left over is still mine. Okay, but I run up a balance on the card. I pay it off every month so I don't have to pay any interest on it. But for the time that I owe the money, they consider the money that I owe them to be an asset because it is an account receivable. I owe them, so it is an asset as far as their books are concerned. This is how things become over-leveraged. So you got zombie corporations that are worth nothing, and yet because the bank owns stock or bonds from these companies, the bank considers them to be assets. Never mind that that company could collapse tomorrow. Okay? So this bank is over-leveraged from owning all these junk bonds and bad debts. And then this other bank is invested in that bank. There was a big fear about Evergrande in China, and that this was going to cause all kinds of problems. Well, that wound up being nothing, but China has an entirely different financial system. Although China, as far as Evergrande was concerned, they were like, okay, if the corporation collapses, the corporation collapses. We will bail out the homeowners, because Evergrande was primarily originally real estate, but went off into other stuff without any authorization. The Chinese government is like, okay, if you fall, you fall. We're not going to bail you out. We will bail out the homeowners. We will help our people. Housing is for people to live in. Residential housing is for people to live in. It is not for speculation. We don't have that kind of system in the United States or the West at all. You know, so these corporations can keep on inflating their stock price, and as long as the banks are still invested in these corporations, then they consider the stock value to be an asset. When the stock market falls by 20%, 30%, 50%, the banks are at risk of failing. I don't know about you, pardon me, I don't know about you, but I'm not in favor of bailing out the banks again. Unless we nationalize the banks so that this does not happen again. And again, we need to eliminate the stock market, convert all stocks into bonds, and get rid of all the problems that are associated with the stock market. Every financial crash in the United States for the last 150 years has been caused by stock speculation. No exceptions at all. No exceptions. All right. Share this video. Talk about these subjects. If you can afford it, please donate whatever you can to help expand this channel and my presidential campaign. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a good day.